The store was alive with the rhythm of an ordinary afternoon, cash registers chiming, scanners beeping, shoppers comparing prices, and the low murmur of conversations blending with background music. The camera lingers on a woman moving quietly through the aisles. She isn't flashy, she isn't loud, just another customer in jeans, a hoodie, and sneakers carrying a small basket of groceries. But there's something about her presence, an air of calm composure in her eyes. Her name is Maya Harris. Without warning, the glass doors slam open. Two rookie officers rush inside, their radios crackling, boots pounding against the polished floor. Shoppers glance up, startled, clutching their children, pulling back from the sudden commotion. The officers' eyes sweep across the store, but they don't hesitate. They zero in on Maya. "There she is," one of them mutters with certainty. The other smirks, lips curling with disdain. "We got her. Classic shoplifter." Heads turn instantly. The atmosphere changes. Shoppers whisper to each other, some gasping, others pulling out phones. Maya blinks, confused but calm, as the officers march toward her like predators closing in. "I think you've made a mistake," she begins, her voice steady, her basket still in her hands. But before she can say another word, they seize her arms. Metal cuffs bite into her wrists with a cold finality. "Save it for the station," one officer spits. His tone isn't just dismissive. It drips with the arrogance of assumption. Gasps ripple through the crowd. A mother clutches her child closer. A man mutters under his breath, "Guess she couldn't afford it." Another shakes his head. People like that, always trying to take shortcuts. The humiliation is swift and public. Maya's eyes lower, not in defeat, but in quiet restraint. She doesn't resist. She doesn't fight. She lets them believe what they want. Around her, strangers stare with judgment, some with pity, and a few with poorly hidden satisfaction. The rookies, puffed up with self-importance, drag her toward the exit as though they've just caught the criminal of the century. One even chuckles. "Bet she's done this before." The scene is a gut punch. A respected woman reduced in the eyes of onlookers to nothing more than a stereotype. Phones record, whispers spread, and indignation boils in the viewer's chest, and then, just before the screen cuts to black, the narrator's voice slices through the chaos. What they didn't know was that this woman wasn't a shoplifter. She was one of the highest-ranking officers in the department. Shock, injustice, and a hidden reversal teased. The audience must stay to see this story unfold. Maya Harris had spent over 2 decades in uniform, her life defined by service, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to justice. As a police captain, she commanded entire precincts, trained officers in the art of calm under pressure, and earned the respect of superiors who knew she could handle situations that broke lesser leaders. But today, stripped of her badge and her blues, she was simply Maya, dressed in a plain gray hoodie, faded jeans, and sneakers that had seen better days. She hadn't come to make an impression. She had only come to buy groceries. That was all it took for the rookie officers to decide she was guilty. They were young, eager, and cocky, the type who carried their badges like shields rather than responsibilities. One of them had been on the force barely 6 months, already convinced he could spot a criminal by appearance alone. The other mirrored his arrogance, scanning Maya up and down with the confidence of someone who had never been challenged. To them, she wasn't a decorated captain. She was just another suspect who fit a profile they had written in their own minds. "She does look suspicious," a man near the checkout muttered under his breath. He didn't mean to be cruel. It was casual, almost reflexive. But in that moment, his words carried the weight of every assumption Maya had endured her entire life. Another shopper leaned closer to her friend, whispering just loud enough for Maya to hear. "Maybe she can't afford those clothes. Some people just, you know." The sentence trailed off, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Every glance toward Maya was sharpened by prejudice. Strangers' eyes judged her as though her hoodie, her skin color, and her quiet demeanor were proof enough of guilt. And yet, through it all, she remained composed. Maya didn't shout. She didn't plead. She didn't fight back. She had seen too many people lose themselves in the storm of injustice. Instead, she let her silence speak, her posture tall and her eyes steady. The same calm she had once carried in standoffs, crime scenes, and crisis negotiations now anchored her in the face of humiliation. The rookies, too inexperienced to sense the quiet strength in front of them, barked orders and tightened the cuffs with unnecessary force. To them, this was a victory, a win they'd brag about in the locker room later, but beneath Maya's calm exterior, the storm brewed. She had felt this sting before, being underestimated, dismissed, reduced to nothing more than an assumption. And while the crowd muttered their half-truths and the rookies reveled in their power, she knew the moment of reckoning was coming, because if there was one thing Captain Maya Harris had learned in her years of service, it was this: arrogance always exposes itself, and when it does, justice follows close behind. The viewers watching can feel it, that pull of injustice, the urge to see the tables turn, the deep craving for the reveal. The story has only just begun. The cuffs clicked tighter around Maya's wrists as the two rookies hauled her a few steps toward the door. Shoppers parted like water around them, whispering, recording, some smirking as if they were witnessing some kind of entertainment. Maya didn't flinch. Her breathing stayed steady, her shoulders squared, her voice calm. "I didn't take anything," she said evenly, turning her head just enough to make eye contact with the nearest officer. "Check the cameras. They'll prove it." Her words were simple, rational, the kind of logic any officer should respect. But instead of pausing, the rookie sneered. "Save it for the station." He tugged at her arm roughly, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "That's what they all say." A ripple of agreement ran through the crowd. A man near the registers chuckled under his breath. Another shook his head as if to say, "Case closed." Maya stopped moving. Her voice sharpened just enough to cut through the noise. "You're making a mistake." The second officer laughed, nudging his partner. "We've heard that one before, too. Always innocent, always misunderstood. Until we check their pockets." He turned to the audience of bystanders, raising his voice just enough. "Folks, don't worry. We've got this under control." The crowd seemed to nod along, relieved someone was handling it. No one questioned the cuffs on Maya's wrists. No one questioned the lack of evidence. They just wanted the scene to move on. And yet, standing by the customer service desk, the store manager shifted uncomfortably. He had seen Maya here before. Always polite, always quiet. He knew the security cameras had a clear view of every aisle, but his mouth stayed closed. His eyes darted between the officers and the recording phones around them. He chose silence. Maya caught the hesitation, the cowardice in his eyes. It stung more than the cuffs. The rookies began pulling her toward the exit again, louder now, feeding off each other's bravado. One muttered something about writing up another career criminal, while the other smirked like he'd just won a medal. But Maya's steps slowed. Her chin lifted slightly, and then she stopped altogether. The tug on her arms didn't move her this time. Slowly, deliberately, she turned her head toward the officer gripping her wrist. Her eyes locked onto his. Her voice dropped to a level tone, one that carried authority without needing to shout. "Do you even know who I am?" The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. The chatter of the crowd faltered. Phones zoomed in closer. For the first time since storming through those glass doors, the rookies hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but enough to make the audience lean forward. Suspense thickened, coiling like a spring ready to snap. The officers had no idea that the woman they mocked wasn't some shoplifter at all. She was their superior, their captain. The truth was seconds away from exploding. The automatic doors slid open as the rookies shoved Maya out into the afternoon sun, the cuffs biting harder with every step. The once ordinary street outside the store suddenly became a stage. Shoppers spilled out behind them, phones raised high, recording every second. The quiet chatter of curiosity transformed into a chorus of gasps, whispers, and the sharp clicks of camera shutters. "Move it," one officer barked, tightening his grip on her arm. His partner leaned closer, his smirk ugly and satisfied. "Bet she's done this before," he muttered loud enough for onlookers to hear. "Career shoplifter. Probably thinks she's clever." The insult hit like a slap, not because it wounded Maya, she had endured worse, but because it was being broadcast for the world to see. Dozens of eyes, judging, condemning, without ever asking for proof. Her purse dangled from her shoulder, barely zipped. Inside, just inches away, sat her badge and department-issued ID. Her entire career, her authority, her rank, evidence that could end this nightmare instantly. But the rookies never bothered to look. They didn't ask. They didn't care. Assumption was easier than truth. As they marched her toward the squad car, a little girl clutched her mother's hand tightly, tugging at her sleeve. "Mommy," she whispered, confusion written across her face. "Why are they arresting that lady? She didn't do anything." The mother pressed a finger to her lips, eyes darting nervously to the officers. "Quiet, sweetheart," she whispered back, her voice breaking. "We don't get involved." The words twisted the knife. Maya had sworn her life to protect families like theirs, to be the shield when the world felt dangerous. And now, in front of a child's innocent eyes, she was painted as the danger herself. Phones in the crowd caught every moment. The rookie's arrogance, Maya's silence, the whispers and stares. Clips were already uploading, captions already forming. Shoplifter caught. Justice served. A lie traveling faster than the truth ever could. The squad car loomed closer, its metal frame reflecting the flashing lights that spun lazily on top. One rookie yanked the back door open, the other pushed Maya forward, guiding her toward the seat like she was already convicted. The cuffs clinked as she turned her head slightly, scanning the crowd. Not with shame, not with fear, but with that same quiet composure that had carried her through crime scenes and crisis calls. She knew her moment was coming. The officers didn't notice. They only shoved harder, one hand pressing on her shoulder to force her inside the car. "Get in," the first one ordered, his tone dripping with authority he hadn't earned. And then, like a crack of thunder, another voice shattered the scene. Deep, commanding, immovable. "What? Exactly. Do you think you're doing with my captain?" The words froze everything. The rookies stiffened. The crowd fell silent. Even the child turned her head toward the source of the booming voice. Phones pivoted instantly, cameras zooming in. Suspense gripped every witness. Whoever had spoken wasn't just another bystander. The reveal was seconds away. The crowd parted like a wave as the source of the voice came into view. A tall man in a crisp uniform pushed through the circle of bystanders, his presence commanding immediate respect. The badges on his chest glinted in the sunlight, but it was the authority in his stride that silenced the murmurs. Lieutenant Garcia had arrived. The rookies straightened instinctively, but it was already too late. His eyes locked onto Maya, the sight of her in cuffs hitting him like a punch to the gut. For a moment he didn't breathe. Then, his face drained of color, disbelief flashing across his features. "Captain Harris?" His voice cracked in shock. "What on earth? How? Why are you in handcuffs?" The name hit the air like a bomb. The crowd gasped collectively, phones trembling in hands as people realized what they were hearing. Whispers rippled like wildfire. Did he say captain? "She's a police captain." No way. That woman's their boss? The rookies froze, their bravado evaporating in an instant. The smirk slid off the first officer's face. The second stammered, his grip on Maya's arm loosening. "Captain, you mean, she's really—" His words stumbled over each other, his confidence shattering. Garcia's jaw tightened, his glare shifting to the two rookies. "Take those cuffs off, now." For the first time since the ordeal began, Maya raised her chin. Her voice was no longer calm and patient. It was sharp, precise, and carried the authority of someone used to commanding entire units. "Yes," she said, her tone cutting through the silence. "I'm Captain Maya Harris. And you just handcuffed your superior officer without cause. You ignored the procedure. You ignored evidence. And you humiliated me in front of civilians." The weight of her words landed with devastating force. Gasps turned into murmurs, murmurs into outrage. Bystanders shook their heads, some muttering, others filming closer. The rookies couldn't even meet her eyes. One finally fumbled for the cuffs, his hands trembling as he tried to unlock them. "Ma'am, we thought—" "You thought wrong," Maya snapped, her voice firm but controlled. "And in this line of work, thinking wrong without proof destroys lives." The silence was suffocating. Every pair of eyes in that crowd was on the rookies now, their arrogance stripped bare, their judgment exposed. Lieutenant Garcia stepped closer, lowering his voice, but the anger in it was undeniable. "Do you have any idea what you've done? This isn't just misconduct. This is career-ending." The rookies swallowed hard, faces pale. their earlier smugness replaced by raw panic. And then, as the tension reached its peak, the narrator's voice slid in like a blade. And in that instant, the hunters realized they were the prey. Phones zoomed in tighter, capturing the shift of power, the humiliation, the poetic reversal. The audience at home could feel it. Justice was finally about to turn the tide. Maya stepped back from the open squad car door, the sunlight catching on the silver cuffs around her wrists. For a moment, she didn't move. Her stillness itself became a statement. The rookies shifted uncomfortably at her side, their grip faltering, while the crowd pressed in tighter, phones raised, recording every second. With a slow, deliberate breath, Maya straightened, lifted her chin, and brushed the dust from her hoodie sleeve. Her movements weren't frantic, weren't rushed. They were dignified. When she spoke, her voice wasn't loud, but it carried with a clarity that silenced the entire street. "This," she said, her tone razor-sharp, "is why trust in law enforcement is broken." The words cut the air, commanding the attention of every bystander. Parents holding their children paused mid-step. Teenagers lowered their voices, whispering as they watched through their phone screens. Even Lieutenant Garcia, who stood a few feet away, froze, his eyes narrowing as the truth in her words rang out. Maya turned slowly, her eyes scanning the crowd, as if addressing not only the people present but the millions who would soon see this video online. Bias, assumptions, disrespect. These are the poisons eating away at our communities. And the worst part. She paused, letting the silence burn. They come not just from criminals on the streets but from officers in uniform. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A man near the front muttered, "She's right." A woman behind him whispered, "Finally, someone brave enough to say it." The rookies, standing pale and awkward, looked less like protectors and more like chastised schoolchildren. One of them tried to salvage dignity. "Captain, we didn't know." His voice wavered, desperate. Maya's head snapped toward him. "That's the problem. You didn't know. And worse, you didn't care to know. You didn't ask. You didn't check. You saw a hoodie. You saw brown skin. And you assumed you were a criminal." Her words struck like hammer blows. The rookie swallowed hard, his eyes darting toward the ground. His partner's lips trembled, but he couldn't form a reply. Maya's voice hardened. "If this is how you treat me, your superior officer, in broad daylight with witnesses recording, then tell me, how do you treat civilians when no one is watching?" The silence that followed was heavier than any handcuffs. The crowd erupted in murmurs, outrage simmering. A young man raised his phone higher, narrating for his live stream. "She just destroyed them. They cuffed their own captain. This is insane." The rookies glanced at each other, panic creeping into their faces. Their earlier bravado had evaporated, replaced by raw fear. The first one stammered, "Captain, please, we're sorry. We didn't mean—" "You didn't mean?" Maya's words cracked like thunder. "You meant every word you said. Every shove. Every assumption. You acted with arrogance, not evidence. You treated me like a criminal, not a citizen. And now, you want to apologize because you've been caught." The crowd broke into scattered applause, a few cheers ringing out. What had started as voyeuristic curiosity was now transforming into something else. Solidarity. People weren't just watching, they were siding with her. Lieutenant Garcia shifted uncomfortably, aware of how this moment would spread like wildfire. The rookies' faces were pale, drained of all colors. Maya, calm and deliberate, let the weight of silence stretch again. She turned back to face the officer who had first cuffed her, her gaze so steady he flinched. She took a single step forward, her presence radiating authority. Her voice dropped lower, quiet but absolute, the kind of command that brooked no argument. "Take off my cuffs, now." The rookie froze, fumbling for his keys, the metal rattling in his trembling hands. The crowd pressed in tighter, breath held. Phones captured every angle, every word, every flicker of shame on the rookies' faces. Because everyone knew, once those cuffs came off, everything changed, and in that tension, caught between humiliation and reckoning, the audience at home could feel it in their bones. The hunters had lost their power. The tables were turning, and the real justice was just beginning. The rookie's trembling fingers finally unlocked the cuffs. The cold steel slipped from Maya's wrists with a metallic click that seemed to echo louder than the crowd's murmurs. She didn't rub her wrists, didn't show pain, she simply held her hands steady, free at last, her dignity radiating stronger than ever. "Lieutenant Garcia," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the heavy silence. "Call internal affairs, immediately." The command wasn't shouted, yet it carried the weight of absolute authority. Garcia's eyes widened, but he didn't hesitate. He lifted his radio and barked orders, his tone urgent. The rookies stiffened in horror, realizing this was no longer just an embarrassing mistake. This was official. Their careers were now hanging by a thread. Maya turned to the crowd, her expression composed, her voice calm but ringing with conviction. "This is not just about me. This is about accountability. Because if we, as officers, are not held responsible for our actions, then how can we ask the community to trust us?" A ripple of applause broke out. It started small, a few claps from the back of the crowd, but quickly grew. Within seconds, the sidewalks erupted in cheers. Some shouted, "Yes!" Others raised their fists in solidarity. And then a chant began to spread like fire. "Accountability! Accountability! Accountability!" The rookies shrank into themselves, their earlier arrogance crushed under the weight of public outrage. Their faces were pale, their eyes darting desperately between Garcia and Maya as if searching for a lifeline. There was none. Internal affairs arrived within minutes. 3 officers in dark suits, badges flashing as they pushed through the throng of bystanders. The cameras followed them, recording every second. One of them addressed Maya directly. "Captain Harris will need your full statement." "You'll have it," Maya replied smoothly. She turned toward the rookies. "And I expect theirs too, along with a full incident report filed today." The younger of the two tried to plead. "Captain, please, we didn't mean—" Maya raised a hand, silencing him instantly. "Enough. You don't get to hide behind excuses when your actions speak louder than your words. Effective immediately, both of you are suspended pending investigation." The crowd erupted again, some clapping, others cheering. Phones captured every angle, ensuring that no one could ever claim this moment didn't happen. The rookies looked like deer caught in headlights, their careers crumbling in real time. Garcia lowered his head, clearly shaken, but he nodded in agreement. "You heard the captain. Hand over your weapons and badges. Now." The rookies' hands trembled as they complied, unholstering their service weapons and placing them on the hood of the squad car. Then, with shame burning in their faces, they unclipped their badges. The sight of those emblems, symbols of authority, being surrendered under the eyes of the public struck with poetic irony. The crowd roared, voices rising louder. "Accountability! Accountability!" Maya didn't bask in their humiliation. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply stood tall, her expression calm, the embodiment of professionalism. To her, this wasn't about revenge. It was about setting a standard. By the time the sun dipped lower in the sky, the first videos had already exploded across social media. Clips of the rookies shoving Maya, sneering, "Classic shoplifter," and then the thunderous reveal, "Captain Harris?" flooded timelines. Hashtags trended within hours. "Ya Captain Harris," "Ajaka cops," "Arrest their captain," "Waki accountability." Now, the internet devoured the story. "Cops arrest their own captain by mistake," became a headline plastered on news feeds from coast to coast. Millions of views poured in within hours, each video replayed, dissected, and shared with outrage and disbelief. Memes popped up, the rookies' arrogant smirks frozen beside Maya's calm glare, and then came the commentary. Civil rights activists weighed in, journalists debated on primetime shows. Community leaders pointed to the clip as proof of what they had been saying for years. Racial bias wasn't abstract, it was alive, visible, undeniable. National debate erupted almost overnight. Talk shows dissected every frame. Politicians tweeted statements. Police departments across the country scrambled to reassure their communities. "This is why reform is necessary," one anchor declared. When assumptions replace evidence, when prejudice replaces professionalism, no one is safe, even those in uniform. But amid the storm, Maya herself became a beacon. Clips of her calm authority, her composed words to the crowd, bias, assumptions, disrespect, spread like wildfire. She was praised for her restraint, for not lashing out, for showing the dignity her rookies had denied her. She could have lost her temper. She could have fought back, one commentator said during a broadcast. Instead, she modeled exactly what leadership looks like under pressure. Community groups began to hold up her image as a symbol of integrity. Editorials praised her as proof that real change could come from within law enforcement. For once, the public wasn't talking about abuse of power. They were talking about a woman who demanded accountability, even for those under her command. And the irony? The rookies who had mocked her, shoved her, and cuffed her without cause had now immortalized her. Their arrogance had handed Maya the platform to highlight everything broken within the system. She hadn't just been vindicated. She had been elevated. As night fell, the chants of accountability still echoed online, replayed in clip after clip, attached to millions of shares. Maya Harris, the woman once mistaken for a shoplifter, was now trending worldwide as a symbol of justice, dignity, and true leadership. The rookies, meanwhile, faded into silence, suspended, disgraced, and destined to be remembered not for their service, but for the moment they learned that arrogance has consequences. And through it all, one truth burned clear in every headline, every chant, every clip shared across the globe: justice had been delivered. Weeks had passed since the incident outside the downtown store, but the ripples of that day had only grown stronger. What began as a humiliation had transformed into a cultural reckoning, and at the center of it all stood Captain Maya Harris. The press conference was held in the city's largest municipal building, cameras flashing as reporters filled every seat. A podium stood at the center of the stage, draped in a dark blue cloth embroidered with the department's emblem. Behind it hung a massive banner in bold lettering: "Justice begins within." When Maya stepped to the microphone, the room hushed. She wasn't in jeans and a hoodie this time. She wore her captain's uniform, crisp and immaculate, every medal and ribbon gleaming under the lights. Yet her posture carried the same quiet composure as before, the strength of a woman who didn't need to shout to be heard. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice steady. "A few weeks ago, an incident occurred that exposed deep cracks within our system. It showed the dangers of assumption, the failures of unchecked bias, and the consequences of disrespect. That incident involved me. But make no mistake, this is not about me. It is about every civilian who has ever been treated unfairly because of prejudice. And it is about how we, as a department, choose to move forward." Flashes popped as her words landed. She glanced briefly at the banner behind her, then continued. "Today, I am announcing new department-wide reforms. Every officer, rookie to veteran, will undergo mandatory bias training. We will implement stricter accountability policies, ensuring that no incident of misconduct is swept under the rug. We will create an independent review board, made up of community members as well as officers, to guarantee transparency. And finally, we will hold ourselves to the same standard we demand of the citizens we serve." Applause broke out among some of the reporters, unusual for a press conference. Cameras zoomed in tighter. Maya paused, letting the words breathe. "This department will no longer tolerate arrogance disguised as authority. We will serve with honor. We will protect with respect. And we will prove that justice truly begins within." Her final words drew a standing ovation from the audience. Reporters rushed to capture every angle, already preparing the evening's headlines. "Captain Harris leads reform. Justice begins within." Outside, the change was already visible. Downtown, a new billboard had been unveiled just days earlier. Against a clean white background, Maya's silhouette stood tall, her captain's cap under one arm, her gaze fixed forward with determination. Across the image in bold blue letters were the words, "Serve with honor. Protect with respect." Passers-by stopped to take photos, some saluting, others simply nodding in quiet agreement. On social media, the billboard went viral, becoming both a symbol of reform and a rallying cry. Hashtags like "Maka serve with honor" and "Justice begins" within trended for weeks, sparking conversations far beyond the city limits. And what of the rookies who had once cuffed her with sneers and arrogance? Their fates were sealed quietly. Official statements described their actions as a failure of judgment and professionalism. Their names were released to the public, their records marred. Within days, they were dismissed from the department. For them, there were no second chances. Their reputations were destroyed, their arrogance immortalized in millions of viral clips replayed daily. Employers hesitated, communities mocked them, and their faces became cautionary tales of what happens when bias goes unchecked. The hunters had indeed become the prey, yet Maya never gloated. When asked by reporters about their dismissal, her answer was measured. This isn't about destroying careers. It's about accountability, and accountability means consequences. I hope they learn from this experience, but I also hope the entire department learns from it. 2. The narrator's voice layered over a slow montage. Maya at the podium, Maya's billboard downtown, children pointing up at her picture with admiration. Power isn't the badge you wear. It's the integrity behind it. The story lingered in the air, not as a scandal, but as a transformation. A humiliation had become a message. A moment of injustice had become a movement for change. And the woman who once stood in cuffs was now the face of reform. The final scene fades in. Maya walking down the precinct hallway, officers on both sides straightening their posture as she passes. Some nod respectfully. Others whisper to each other. But all know one truth. Maya Harris has changed the rules. The screen darkens, and then a final message appears, direct and personal. Have you ever been underestimated, only to prove them wrong? Share your story below, and subscribe for more inspiring real-life stories. The music swells, hopeful, determined, triumphant. The story ends not in despair, but in empowerment, because justice didn't end with Maya Harris's freedom. It began with her leadership.